They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, the picture I found that Father's Day was worth 30 years of my life, a lifetime of lies, and the entire fortune I thought I was leaving to my family. That morning, I was feeling sentimental. It was Father's Day, and the doorbell rang. It was a courier delivering a medium-sized, heavy box from my daughter, Leda, who lived 3 states away. I hadn't seen Leda in person for nearly 3 years, but we talked every week. I picked up the box, smiling, eager to see what thoughtful gift my successful, loving daughter had sent me. I was about to rip into the brown tape when my wife, Clara, stopped me dead. Clara wasn't Leda's mother, but my second wife. Leda's mother, Laura, had passed away years ago. Clara had been nothing but supportive of my relationship with Leda. But as I reached for the box cutter, Clara grabbed my arm, her face white with fear, her eyes wide with a panicked urgency I had never seen before. Her voice was a strained whisper, filled with a desperate warning. "Don't open it! Can't you see?" I looked at the box, then at her, confused. There was nothing unusual about the packaging, but Clara's fear was terrifyingly real. "Open it later, please," she insisted, pulling me away. Her frantic attempt to keep me from the box, from my daughter's gift, immediately replaced my happy curiosity with a cold, sharp blade of suspicion. What could be inside that box that would terrify my wife so much? And why would Leda send something my wife didn't want me to see? I put the box down, pretending to obey, but I knew in that instant my peaceful life was over. The box wasn't a gift, it was a bomb, and Clara knew the timer was ticking. I was going to open it, but I was going to do it in secret. And what I found inside would reveal a family conspiracy that had been running for over 20 years. After Clara's panic attack over a simple Father's Day box, the house felt like a surveillance ward. Every move I made, I felt her eyes on me. She kept suggesting we put the box up in the attic until Leda called again, a subtle way to ensure I never opened it. But her fear was my confirmation. It wasn't the package she was afraid of. It was the truth inside the package. The question wasn't if I would open it, but when I could open it without her knowing. I feigned exhaustion that afternoon, telling Clara I needed a nap. The moment I heard her car pull out of the driveway, supposedly for groceries, I moved. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, surgical determination. I carried the heavy box into my study, locked the door, and tore off the brown tape. The weight of the package was immediately explained. The box was mostly filled with old, heavy newspapers and packing material. The weight was a smokescreen. Digging past the debris, I found the real gift: 2 small, innocuous items wrapped in tissue paper. The first was a faded, crumpled photo. The second was a single sheet of paper folded precisely. I looked at the photo first. It was old, maybe 2 decades old, grainy and taken outside a professional building. In the picture were 3 people: my wife, Clara, my daughter, Leda, looking uncomfortable and clearly only a teenager, and a stern-looking man I immediately recognized as Marcus Thorne, a corporate attorney I had occasionally used years ago. The picture was taken outside a place with a distinctive sign: Pacific Shore Trust and Investments. My mind immediately flashed back to a difficult period right after Leda's mother died, a time when I had trusted Clara completely with organizing my life. The scene confirmed an old, deep conspiracy. Then I unfolded the paper. It wasn't a Father's Day card. It was a cryptic ledger sheet. It detailed a single, massive financial transaction dated 20 years ago, labeled only as Transfer of Shares, L Corp. L Corp was the holding company for the majority of my entire company, the shares I thought I still controlled. I had always wondered why my control had felt so tenuous, why my voting power had diminished over the years. The note on the bottom of the ledger sheet read, "Dad, look at the signature on the back." My hand trembled as I turned the photo over. Scrawled below Thorne's name and Leda's shaky signature was the final, devastating signature: Clara's. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Clara hadn't just married me, she had begun conspiring with my own daughter while Leda was still a child to systematically strip me of my company's assets and hide the proceeds in a secret trust. Leda's distance wasn't natural. It was engineered by Clara to maintain the illusion of my control while she was secretly bleeding me dry. The grief for the decades I had wasted, the trust I had misplaced, and the love that was a complete lie turned into an absolute volcanic fury. The time for sorrow was over. The time for retribution had begun. I immediately called Mr. Thorne, the lawyer in the photo, who was now retired. I used all my leverage to get him on the phone. "Mr. Thorne," I said, my voice dangerously level, "I have a 20-year-old photo of you, my wife Clara, and my daughter Leda outside the Pacific Shore Trust and Investments. I need every detail on the L Corp share transfer. Now." Thorne was silent, then stammered a reluctant agreement. My next call was to Leda. I had to know if she was a victim or an active participant. "Leda," I said, trying to sound casual, "I just got your package. Haven't opened it yet." Leda's reply was strained, laced with anxious relief. "Oh good, don't open it yet, Dad. I sent the wrong thing. I'll call you later." She lied. That single lie, meant to protect Clara, confirmed two things. Leda was involved, and she had sent the box specifically to warn me, knowing it would expose Clara. The conspiracy had cracked, and now I was going to shatter it completely. When Clara returned from her errands, I was ready. I greeted her with a warm kiss and an unnerving calm, making a grand show of being relaxed, even pouring myself a drink, all while the photographic evidence of her 20-year betrayal was safely tucked inside my jacket pocket. I needed her to be comfortable, to be certain of her control, so the fall would be that much farther. We sat down, and I brought up the box. "You know, honey," I said, taking a sip of my whiskey, "I've been thinking about that Father's Day gift Leda sent. Why were you so worried about me opening it? Did you think she sent me something inappropriate?" Clara nervously laughed, her voice too high. "Of course not, darling. I think she's been so busy it might have been some silly trinket, and I didn't want you disappointed." She looked relieved, thinking she had smoothed over the momentary panic. I let her relax for 1 minute more, and then I delivered the punch. I pulled out the photo and the ledger sheet, laying them both flat on the coffee table. Disappointed? No, Clara. Devastated, maybe. The color drained from her face faster than I thought possible, her eyes fixed on the photograph of her, Leda, and Attorney Thorne outside the Pacific Shore Trust. Her initial shock gave way to a desperate, pathetic attempt at denial. I don't know what this is. It's just an old picture. I think Laura took it years ago," she stammered, reaching for the documents. I slapped my hand down on the papers before she could grab them. "Don't insult my intelligence. This is a 20-year-old receipt for a massive stop transfer from L Corp, and the man in the photo, Marcus Thorne, just spent an hour on the phone confessing everything." Clara froze, the denial dying on her lips. I continued, detailing the horrific truth Thorne had reluctantly revealed. Clara had exploited the chaos after my first wife's death, using Leda, who was then a minor, to execute a guardianship filing. Under the guise of protecting Leda's future, she used her temporary control to transfer the majority shares of my company into a secret trust controlled solely by Clara and Leda. The daughter was the beneficiary, but Clara was the trustee and the mastermind. It was a methodical financial ambush designed to take my life's work. But then came the true shocking twist, the one that broke Clara's will entirely. "Thorne also informed me of something about our marriage, Clara," I said, leaning in. "He said you convinced him to draft a fake prenuptial agreement, but you never properly executed the divorce from your previous secret marriage overseas. The marriage you entered with me is technically voidable due to technical bigamy and fraudulent inducement. Your 20-year scheme was based on a legal house of cards." Clara didn't scream or deny it. She just crumbled, sobbing hysterically as the full weight of the legal reality crushed her. She had risked everything on a deep, hidden lie. I then addressed Leda's role, defending my daughter. Leda sent that box, not as a co-conspirator, but as a warning. She was a child when you manipulated her signature, but she finally found her conscience and tried to warn her father that you were preparing to liquidate the last of the assets. My phone vibrated. It was a confirmation email. I looked at Clara, now a pathetic, defeated wreck, and delivered the coup de grace. The time for talking is over. My lawyer just filed for divorce and, more importantly, filed the lawsuit to dissolve the Pacific Shore Trust based on the coercion of a minor, and the voidable marriage. You don't just lose the assets you stole, you lose your claim to every penny of my legitimate wealth. I stood up, feeling 30 years of lies wash away. You wanted my money? You won't get a single dime. I turned and walked out of the study, leaving Clara alone with the scattered evidence of her ruined life. I didn't drive away immediately. I stood outside my study, listening to the muffled, raw sound of Clara's breakdown. It was the sound of a 20-year plan crashing to dust, and it was the sweetest sound of justice I had ever heard. The confrontation was the turning point, but the true climax was the unfolding legal reality that would leave her completely annihilated. The moment I left the house, I went straight to my financial headquarters, my new lawyer, Mr. Stern's office. I didn't want to rely on the reluctant Mr. Thorne anymore. We spent the next 48 hours in a whirlwind of legal action. Mr. Stern immediately filed a petition to void marriage based on the technical bigamy Clara had hidden. This single move was the key to my entire revenge, because if the marriage was void, Clara was legally entitled to nothing as a spouse. She wouldn't even get half of the marital assets. She would only get back what she brought into the marriage, which, thanks to her previous secret debts, was essentially zero. The second, equally devastating action was the lawsuit against the Pacific Shore Trust. Using the photo, the ledger, and Thorne's reluctant testimony, we sued to have the stock transfer declared void ab initio, void from the beginning, because the transfer of shares was executed under coercion and fraud involving a minor, Leda. This was not just a lawsuit. It was a full-scale assault on the entire corporate structure she had built to hide my assets. The intensity of the climax hit its peak when Clara, in a desperate attempt to save face, called me. She wasn't begging for love, she was threatening me. "If you do this, I will expose every mistake you ever made in business. I will tell the world you abused Leda's mother," she shrieked. I didn't flinch. I let her finish, then calmly said, "Clara, my lawyers have copies of all your original documents, including the sealed transfer agreements and the technical bigamy paperwork. Everything is public now. You have nothing left to threaten me with." I hung up and filed a temporary restraining order to keep her away from all company property and accounts. My revenge was complete. I not only recovered my majority control of L Corp and the stolen shares, ensuring my life's work was safe, but I had legally, publicly, and financially erased Clara from my life and my fortune. The shares recovered were immediately placed into a new, irrevocable trust that named Leda's children, my grandchildren, as the primary beneficiaries, ensuring Leda could never be coerced or tempted to misuse them. This act proved my love for my true family and finalized the justice served to Clara. The dust settled quickly. Within 2 weeks, Clara was served her final papers, the lawsuit to recover my shares was moving forward swiftly, and the technical voiding of our marriage left her with nothing. She walked away with only the few belongings she brought into the house 2 decades ago, her grand, malicious scheme collapsing into ruin. There was no theatrical screaming, just the cold, final reality of justice. My grief for the years wasted with Clara faded, replaced by the deep, profound gratitude I felt for my daughter, Leda. She was not a villain. She was a victim who found the courage to save her father. Leda and I reconnected, and the first time I held my grandchildren, knowing their future was now secured by the assets Clara tried to steal, felt like the purest victory of all. The box wasn't a gift, it was an act of love, a desperate attempt by a daughter to right a 20-year-old wrong. The moral of the story. The greatest lesson I learned is that the truth always finds a way out. Clara spent 20 years building an invisible cage, relying on the assumption that my trust was absolute and my curiosity was non-existent. But she forgot the most important element, a daughter's conscience. When betrayal runs this deep, you must fight with the same cunning and precision your enemy used against you. The best revenge isn't loud or violent. It's cold, legal, and final. It is the surgical destruction of the betrayer's foundation, leaving them to stand on nothing. I didn't just win back my fortune, I won back my relationship with my daughter and secured the future of my legacy. Never let someone's perceived love blind you to their actions, and always build a legal fail-safe for the worst-case scenario. Closure and final thought. My house is quiet now, filled only with the real, honest love of family. I've sold the old property and moved into a new home, free from Clara's shadow. Every Father's Day, I look at the small, empty box that changed my life, not with anger, but with a strange sense of peace. I was saved by the simplest, most honest message, "Can't you see?" I finally did. If you thought Clara's 20-year financial plot was shocking, wait until you hear the story of the man who left his entire fortune to his dog just to spite his greedy children. That will reveal the hidden secret that brought them all to their knees. Subscribe to Iron Revenge and hit that bell so you don't miss our next story of ultimate family justice.